This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradley above at the top of the screen and everything that we're talking about here today. And we have a lot to talk about this morning. So let's get right into this. I'm going to do the numbers, and the numbers this morning are brought to you by Unstoppable Domains. Guys, you have some really great domains. I will be calling more of the .cryptos that you all have picked up, and they are some remarkable names. Again, I know I bought Doggy Blog, Cat Blog, Pet Blog, .crypto, and I'm really excited about those, so make sure you check out your own. I bought World Travel Blog, .crypto. I think that one's going to do really well over time. Don't forget business.com in the .com era, I think sold for $30 or $60 million. So I really do believe this is a new .com era. Check out all the links in the description, as well as the Unstoppable Domains link as well in the description and the comment box. All right, let's do this, guys. Bitcoin, $11,296.39. Ethereum, $371. And XRP, 24 cents. A little bit of a pullback this morning. So, looking at the numbers, it's 0.2444 this morning. Market cap is 11 billion plus. 24-hour volume is down about 3%, and the number volume on the 24-hour is 1.3 billion plus. The total circulating supply changed yesterday or the evening before. Shout out to Hiding Out Now for catching that one. 45,236,000,000 plus. Those are your numbers. Let's get into this because today is about a new Bretton Woods moment. That is the call to action. That's right, from the new managing director, Kristalina Georgieva of the IMF. And we're going to hear some powerful words from her, and then we're going to take a look at some other information and get out of here. But let's go ahead and get this thing started. So U.S. Treasury urges the IMF World Bank to be prudent in fighting the pandemic. And it goes on to talk about restructuring the debt. We know that the debt service suspension service initiative has been very big amongst Dave Malpass and the G20 as well, about getting that debt suspension service initiative really in place and helping out these countries that really are having a problem during this time, which most of us are, but it is really hitting the smaller countries very, very hard. So that was the main part of that conversation. Now let's get to this, because the IMF warns of a sharp adjustment. Are you hearing this? All right now. In financial markets, despite remarkable recovery. Well, when I drill down, on this information, they have Geeta Gopinath, who had a little 5-minute video. Take it easy. I'm not going to play it for you. I'll just give you the summation. And basically, what it talks about is the risk of sharp adjustment in asset prices or periodic bouts of volatility. Okay? And that was from Tobias Adrian, said those specific remarks. But nevertheless, they talk about the recovery and how it will look by 2021. And listen, there's a lot in front of us, and I think we all get that. Let's get right to the heart of it, because we also hear from Kristalina Georgieva, the managing director herself. Let's hear this. Now, this is about 3, maybe 4 minutes, but you need to hear everything she's saying. Okay? Now, you have to understand what calling for a new Bretton Woods moment actually means. Okay? And we're going to get into that, and then I'm going to play you a clip from about a month and a half, 2 months ago, where the IMF literally had a webinar and a conference where they put together a bunch of people, in the IMF and analysts that actually talked about making an external adjustment to the exchange rate peg of dominant currencies, like the US dollar. Listen very carefully to what Kristalina Georgieva says here and lays out this map. Listen, and we'll get into this.
Reflecting on the dramatic change in the world over the last year, I paid a visit to Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, where 44 men signed our Articles of Agreement in 1944. Our founders faced two massive tasks: to deal with the immediate devastation caused by the war and to lay the foundation for a more peaceful, more prosperous post-war world. At the conclusion of the conference, John Maynard Keynes captured the significance of international cooperation as hope for the world. If we can continue, the brotherhood of men will have become more than a phrase.
Really quickly, John Maynard Keynes is also the person that at Bretton Woods, at the time of creating Bretton Woods and the new monetary system at that time, backed by gold, and creating the IMF during that time period, also introduced the idea of the bank or coin, which would be a neutral asset that sit between all the dollars. That was rejected at that time to accept the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency instead. Let's keep going.
As we look forward to welcoming Andorra as our 190th member, the work of the IMF is testament to the values of cooperation and solidarity on which a sisterhood and brotherhood of humanity is built. Today, we face a new Bretton Woods moment, a pandemic that has already cost more than 1 million lives, an economic calamity that will make the world economy 4.4% smaller this year and strip an estimated 11 trillion of output by next year. An untold human desperation in the face of huge disruption, rising poverty for the first time in decades. Once again, we face two massive tasks: to fight the crisis today and build a better tomorrow. We know what action must be taken right now. A durable economic recovery is only possible if we beat the pandemic. Health measures must remain a priority. I urge you to support production and distribution of effective therapies and vaccines to ensure that all countries have access. I also urge you to continue support for workers and businesses until a durable exit from the health crisis. We have seen global fiscal actions of 12 trillion. Major central banks have expanded balance sheets by 7.5 trillion. These synchronized measures have prevented the destructive macro-financial feedback we saw in previous crises. But almost all countries are still hurting, especially emerging market and developing economies. And while the global banking system entered the crisis with high capital and liquidity buffers, there is a weak tail of banks in many emerging markets. We must take measures to prevent the buildup of financial risks over the medium term. We face what I have called a long ascent for the global economy, a climb that will be difficult, uneven, uncertain, and prone to setbacks. But it is a climb up, and we will have a chance to address some persistent problems: low productivity, slow growth, high inequalities, a looming climate crisis. We can do better than build back the pre-pandemic world. We can build forward to a world that is more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive. We must seize this new Bretton Woods moment.
There it is right there. We must seize this new Bretton Woods moment. Ladies and gentlemen, $12 trillion, $7.5 trillion. This is the numbers she's throwing around the room here. You know, a lot of people will argue that, hey, a country like the U.S. can continue to print and continue to print. And look, true to life, it's exactly what they've done, and they've proved that they can do it. But I would remind everybody of a very, very key point here. Yes, they can print their own money, and it doesn't really cost them anything to print the money. However, there is a very, very crucial point here that no one can ever tell you, not the greatest economist in the world. They can't tell you where that intangible line in the sand is. Confidence. And they all understand that they are teetering very close to wherever that intangible line actually is. And if you cross that intangible line of confidence, you will have a disaster to the likes you've never seen. And that is why you have this woman standing right here, right now, calling for a new Bretton Woods moment. Now, what is a Bretton Woods moment? Well, again, created in 1944, Bretton Woods Agreement was reached in 1944 summit held in New Hampshire, USA, on a site by the same name. The agreement was reached by 730 delegates who were representatives of 44 allied nations that attended the summit. The delegates within the agreement used the gold standard to create a fixed currency exchange rate. Let's go on a little further. It was negotiated in 1944. We know that under the Bretton Woods system, gold was basis for the U.S. dollar and other currencies were pegged to the U.S. dollar's value. The Bretton Woods system effectively came to an end in the early 1970s when Nixon, the president of the U.S. at the time, announced that the U.S. would no longer exchange gold for U.S. currency. Are you getting where this is now? Again, at that conference, at that time, John Maynard Keynes had introduced the Bancor coin, which was ditched for the U.S. dollar to be the global reserve currency on the gold standard, and then in a fixed exchange rate peg against all of that, right? So let me take you now to what the conversation with the IMF was back in August on the 18th of this year, just a couple months ago. Let me take you now here and listen to this gentleman, Barry Eichengreen, and what he says here about the Triffin dilemma of the U.S. dollar. If you don't understand, the Triffin dilemma is a dilemma that is created because a national sovereign currency is being used as a global reserve currency as well. So when a country makes adjustments in national policy, they oftentimes have harmful effects on the global policy. And vice versa. When they make a decision based on global policy and the global reserve status of that dollar, it oftentimes can have harmful effects or negative effects in the national side of things domestically in that sovereign nation. That is, in effect, the Triffin dilemma. This entire conference was about making an external adjustment to exchange rate peg of dominant currencies like the U.S. dollar. What does that mean? In short, what that means is if it's worth $1 today, we make a decision that it's worth 70 cents tomorrow. Everyone go back to work. Let's listen to Barry Eichengreen.
I think the paper and the report are a tour de force and profoundly depressing. They're a tour de force in the sense that they contain theory and sophisticated empirical work, but also the new data set that Gita spoke of that a lot of us will be anxious to get our hands on. But the conclusion, to my mind, is depressing because it implies that monetary policy is less effective than we have traditionally thought. In a world where sterilized intervention doesn't do much, monetary policy and exchange rate movements go together. When you're at the zero lower bound, monetary policy works even more heavily by moving the exchange rate because it can't move the interest rate. And if it really is the case that you get less stimulus to exports and less oomph from monetary policy generally, I think it's incumbent on all of us to think about what to do instead. So is this project an argument for fiscal policy? That's depressing because fiscal policy is heavily politicized. Fiscal policy works with even longer lags typically than monetary policy. What do we need to do in terms of reforming our fiscal institutions if we're going to have to rely on them more heavily? And the second part of the question would be, what do we have to do to get out of this position of dollar dominance, because it has the undesirable effect of weakening monetary policy?
Did you just hear what he said? What do we have to do to get out of the effects of dollar dominance? Keep listening.
And it will run up sooner or later against the 21st century Triffin dilemma problem.
It will run up against a 21st century Triffin dilemma problem. The problem is that they can no longer maintain the U.S. dollar and justify it as a global reserve currency. You couple that with Kristalina Georgieva calling for a new Bretton Woods moment. Something is afoot here. Now, on an upside note, let's take a look at this for a second, because this is quite interesting. According to CoinShares, an institutional investor, the current fair value of XRP is actually 10.14 in the British pound. Now, if you convert that, I think it's like $13 or something like that US dollar. All I'll say to that is that I'm showing you this because I firmly believe that if there's going to be a new Bretton Woods moment, it's because they will actually employ the original idea of John Maynard Keynes, because the technology is here now to be able to do it in a ubiquitous manner that is absolutely going to work, and that is XRP and the XRP ledger as a neutral reference point and a universal highway to sit between this new digital financial system that everyone keeps talking about, the Internet of Value. And with that being said, I'm going to play you a commercial that really lays it down of an exchange which is no longer open, but I think it's relevant to send this off into the way it needs to. And shout out to Bank XRP, who I see is back on the scene, and I'm glad he's back. Let's take a look at this video. All right, guys, before we go, I just want to tie this in because that's a pretty powerful commercial. It's a shame the exchange is not around anymore. But what I will say is this. Think about the line of credit that they just announced that they're going to be doing at Ripple. Global liquidity, just as they say. Rob Licker and I were talking late last night and early this morning, and I think he makes a very, very incredible point. And that is, through this line of credit, not only can they approve these people faster than in traditional line of credit loan situations, and even offer them a better rate in most situations than they could get in the traditional markets with banks. But what they're doing by allowing those people all around the world to pay back that line of credit in their local currency is creating more deeper and bigger pools of cash to be able to get the system for XRP up and running much, much faster. Shout out to you, Rob Licker. You were really one smart cookie. All right, that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope everybody's having a great day. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. Click on one of the videos that you see beside on each side right now and keep it going. And make sure you check out the links in the description and the comment box. A lot of really great stuff in case you may need it. And I'll catch all of you on the next one.